29. Let's open the hearing for House Bill 1129 and get a staff report from Serena.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Serena Dolly, staff to the committee. House Bill 1129 concerns the sale or lease of mobile home communities in the property on which they sit. As background, the Manufactured Mobile Home Landlord Tenant Act, or MHLTA, governs the rental agreement between a landlord and a tenant in a mobile home park or manufactured housing community where the tenant has no ownership interest in the land. Under the MHLTA, a landlord must provide 2 notices when selling or closing a mobile home community: a notice of sale and a notice of closure. In terms of the notice of sale, a landlord must provide the notice of sale to each tenant, the Department of Commerce, and other entities within 14 days of publicly offering a community for sale. The notice of sale must include a statement that the landlord intends to sell the community and provide the contact information for the landlord or the landlord's agent. A landlord intending to sell a community is encouraged to negotiate in good faith to sell to a tenant organization or another organization who intends to preserve the community. The second notice is a notice of closure, which must be provided to tenants within 12 months notice of any closure or conversion of a community. The closure notice is not required if the community is being condemned, the community is sold to a tenant or other eligible organization, or the landlord compensates the tenants for the loss of their homes at any point during the notice period and prior to sale of the property. Turning to the bill before you, the bill requires the landlord to provide a notice of sale if the community is being privately offered for sale in addition to being publicly offered for sale, and if the seeks to lease the community in addition to sell it. For the notice of closure, the closure notice requirement is extended from 12 months to 3 years, and the current exception for when a landlord compensates a tenant for the value of their home is modified. Specifically, the 3 years notice is reduced to 24 months if the landlord provides relocation assistance of at least $17,000 for a multi-section home and $11,000 for a single-section home, or to 12 months if the owner provides the relocation assistance and also compensates the tenants for their loss of their homes at market value or $5,000, whichever is greater. A tenant receiving relocation assistance or compensation for the value of their home must be given 12 months to vacate and may relocate the home. If they do not relocate the home, the landlord is responsible for the demolition or disposal. Finally, the bill also adds a third new notice requirement, which is a notice of opportunity to purchase. A landlord must provide a written notice of opportunity to purchase a community to each tenant, the Department of Commerce, and the Housing Finance Commission within 14 days of a community being offered for sale or lease. The notice of opportunity to purchase must include a statement that the landlord intends to sell the community, the advertised or listed selling price, and a statement that qualified tenant organizations or other eligible organizations have 45 days to provide the landlord with a notice of intent to consider purchasing or leasing the community. And if that notice of intent is provided within 45 days, the landlord may not make final acceptance of another offer for 12 months. If an eligible organization submits a notice of intent to purchase, both the landlord and the organization are required to negotiate in good faith. Finally, the Department of Commerce must maintain a registry of all eligible organizations who have submitted a written request to receive notices of opportunity to purchase or lease communities and notify the organizations if such a notice is received. That concludes my briefing. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, Representative Gregerson, welcome to the Housing Committee.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chairs, and Ranking Member. Thank you so much for hearing this bill today. For the record, my name is Mia Gregerson, State Rep from the 33rd Legislative District. And first of all, I really appreciate you hearing this bill, especially so early in session. As you know, whenever you're thinking about closing an entire community, there's a lot of detail that goes into that. And I have appreciated all of the work that you've done over the past few years to really update the RCW, the laws, and think about providing more resources for folks who have to abandon their home. But the reality is that the technical assistance and the resources that it takes to help people move or leave is just, it's overwhelming. And I'm guessing that you would think that too if you had to walk away from your home. And so this legislation is really helping to provide a better ramp. The ramp of being able to give the opportunity to the community to be able to purchase this. And I think it's a very fair and reasonable way. And the second part of this is really about helping. We know that 12 months is difficult for anyone to just walk away from their home. And I think 3 years is reasonable. And you can see there's also the ability for the landowner to work with each of the community members and resourcing them so they actually have something to be able to take with them, some dollars, so they don't go homeless or houseless. So I really hope that you'll consider this legislation as well thought out. You have seen proposals in the past that are in 2 different pieces of legislation, and this is just a combination of both. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I will try to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions for the good representative from the 33rd? Well, they let you off the hook. All righty. Thank you very much. We will close the executive session and we will reopen the public hearings. We will reopen the public hearing on House Bill 1129. And first, let us bring up Ishbel Dickens, Victoria O'Banion, and Stacy Valenzuela. If she's here, she might be remote. Okay, she is remote. And while you're getting settled, just to queue up the people coming in testifying remotely, Stacy Valenzuela, Andrew Calkins, Tina McKinstry, and Ann Sadler, if staff can get to them in the waiting room. And start with 2 minutes and we'll see how we go from there. Thank you. Go ahead.
5 years. First as a volunteer, then as a community organizer, a legal aid attorney, the executive director of the National Manufactured Homeowners Association, and now retired, I volunteer with the Washington Association of Manufactured Homeowners, AMO. I think it is clear to everyone that landlords have a lot of power. They can raise the rent as much as they want, creating economic eviction. In recent months, many homeowners have faced rent increases of 23%, 28% or more. Indeed, in a community in Forks, the rent went from $350 a month to $1,000 a month. Unbelievable but true, they're just renting the land. Landlords can sell their communities to big box stores or to developers whenever they want and evict homeowners without giving them any compensation for the loss of their homes. Many of these displaced homeowners are seniors, young families, people with disabilities and veterans. They will never be homeowners again. When a manufactured housing community closes, the landlord, whether mom and pop or corporate investor, makes a very substantial profit, but the homeowner gets nothing and loses their home. Don't be fooled by the fact that the state gives some relocation assistance to income-eligible households who are displaced. The amount of money barely covers a month's worth of rent once their homes have been. They've had to pay for the demolition of their homes. House Bill 1129 is the solution to this problem. It gives the landlords 4 options. 1, give homeowners a reasonable amount of time to move out if the community is closing. 2, give the homeowners or an eligible organization an opportunity to purchase the community and ensure the long-term preservation of affordable homeownership for years to come. 3, give the homeowners a bit less time to move out, but help them by providing them with some relocation assistance. Sure, it won't be enough to get them back on their feet as homeowners ever again, but it is something. And a landlord in Pierce County recently gave homeowners more than $25,000 to move when their community was closed. Or the 4th option, give homeowners as little time as is reasonably acceptable to move out. In addition to relo assistance, compensate them for the loss of their home, as they will never have a home again to call their own. Current law does not require landlords to provide any financial assistance to families who they are displacing, even though they have been loyal residents, and they will lose their home. I would like to end by letting everyone know that the other day I spoke to a self-described staunch conservative Republican who lives in a manufactured housing community, and he was appalled to hear that no Republican legislator had supported any manufactured housing bill in recent years. May this be the year as when today we honour the memory of Martin Luther King, we all agree that it is time to let justice roll like waters. Please, on behalf of the 72,000 manufactured homeowners and their families who live in manufactured housing communities, give your full support to House Bill 1129, and thank you to those members of this committee who signed on in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And go ahead, Victoria.
Good afternoon. My name is Victoria O'Banion, and I live in the 9th Legislative District. Professionally, I support resident-owned communities program of the Northwest Cooperative Development Center. To date, we have helped 23 manufactured home communities purchase the land under their homes. As a result, there are over 1,000 families across Washington living in comfort, knowing that they will be able to live in their own homes as long as they want. But this bill isn't about those families. It's about Catherine, an older adult living on a fixed income who called me in tears. She was given notice that her community was closing to build new apartments. She wanted to know if I could help save her home. I spoke to her for nearly a month, every single day, and my response was the same: no. The land had been sold before she was notified and the deal was done. I sit before you today representing one of the nonprofit organizations that could have helped Catherine continue to live in her own home had her and her neighbors been given proper notice. This bill is simply about the opportunity to preserve affordable housing and preserve this affordable housing stock. At a minimum, give those voters the time and financial ability to secure alternative housing. So I ask you today, will you support legislation that preserves existing manufactured affordable housing in your district? Will you support legislation that gives residents appropriate relocation time and compensation for their greatest asset, their home? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this panel? All right, seeing none, while we are here and in person, let's bring up Brad Tower, Ryan Erickson, and Bo Harrer. You can correct me on the numerous mispronunciations of names that will happen through the course of this session. And welcome, and whoever is ready, feel free.
I'll lead off if I may. Good afternoon, I'm Bo Harrer. I'm with the Manufactured Housing Communities of Washington and also an owner and builder of manufactured home communities in Washington. Here today in opposition to the bill in its current form. We have been reached out to by the sponsor of this bill for a stakeholders group, and we'd be willing to sit down and discuss this in further detail. But just touching off on some of our primary disagreements on this, the bill is conflating the sale of a manufactured home or a mobile home park with the closure. The vast majority of cases when a community sells, it's not being closed down or redeveloped, especially right now in the current economy. I don't recall the last time one was closed to be turned into a Walmart or another large box store. It does nothing to encourage the development of new housing that Washington needs right now. If anything, I would say the best this could do is freeze the current stock that we have, and I don't see why anybody would want to take the risk of building new housing like this with a law like this hanging over their heads. It's one of the challenges. If you have to sell a community in short order, you can't wait 12 months. And on ROC's own website, they say that they will meet with the seller of the community prior to the community going up for sale or letting the residents know that it's for sale so that they have a chance to negotiate in good faith with the seller of the property. So there's already a mechanism in place for this to work. Where I do agree and where our association has come up with a bill based on an Oregon law that passed almost 10 years ago is to give those associations, those nonprofits, at least a couple weeks notice that the property is for sale, and that gives them a chance to put together a market-driven offer, which they themselves advertise they do on their website. I see that I'm running out of time, but I stand by for further questions.
Thank you. Whoever's next. Yeah, Ryan.
Hello, my name is Ryan Erickson. I work for Commonwealth Real Estate. Our company specializes in affordable housing, and our largest portfolio is in manufactured housing. We have 70 plus thousand homes in Washington State. This could affect. Last year, 129 homes were taken off the market to build over 600 new homes. And I worry that legislation to protect 129 people could be detrimental to the potential 600 new home sites and also to the 70,000 existing residents. My company works with Rock Northwest, and I support resident-owned communities. I think that they're a great concept, whether it's in apartments or in condos or manufactured housing or in any type of ownership. I fully support the concept. Difficulty here, though, is if you delay the period you're allowed to sell your personal property. Last year's bill was for 90 days. This year it's for 1 year. That eliminates the possibility of a 1031 exchange, which is a federal government program to reduce the tax penalty as long as you exchange into a like asset. This would make the property unfeasible for people to come buy it, and it would also make it so the seller would essentially have to sell the property for 15 to 20% more to recoup the same costs, which would have a negative benefit to the residents of the community. I'm already running out of time. I'd love to answer more questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Brad Tower here today on behalf of Commonwealth Real Estate Services. Just kind of batting cleanup here, I would say that there are rarely opportunities to purchase these properties that don't come along with a crisis, either a crisis for the owner or a crisis related to the property itself, usually necessitating an investment to fix failing infrastructure, or if the individual is seeking to sell it because they're having a personal crisis, like a medical crisis, they need to move more quickly than 3 years, or in reality about 4 years, if you figure the way that this would actually get implemented. And we are very favorable to additional qualified bidders in the marketplace. Anybody selling property wants to have as many qualified people as possible come to the table, because that's how you're going to get market rate for the properties. But in this case, we would be increasing the transactional costs on these and making it more difficult for all of the bidders to potentially be able to buy that particular property. So I will save any additional time for questions for the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Representative Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your comments today. I'm unaware of any other real estate transactions that would require a 3-year period of time. And there is something known as uniformity, right, when it comes to transactions. Are there concerns of the constitutionality of this particular piece with regards to uniformity in real estate transactions? And have you, is there any other areas or jurisdictions outside the state? I mean, is this something we've heard of before? Because I haven't.
Yeah, we're certainly concerned about that. And also, no, I'm not aware of any other 1-year wait anywhere else in the country where one property has to wait that long, one specific type of property. I mean, to the point on the exchange, I mean, just consider an estate sale. Many of these are owned by mom and pops, and if they pass away, they have to settle their federal estate tax in about 9 months. And sitting around having this dragging out for over a year, I think is rather unfair as well.
Thank you for the question, Representative. We do believe that there are questions about the constitutionality of this application to just one type of property owner, but of course those are speculative. So we do believe there's a problem, but I can't speak concretely to it.
Representative Entman.
Please briefly describe what is a 1031 exchange.
You want that? Go ahead.
No, that's
It's a federal program that eliminates penalty for exchanging one asset for another. So similar to how you might exchange one Microsoft stock for one Starbucks stock without having a penalty associated, you could sell your home and buy another like property, another home, without having penalties for that.
Thank you, Representative. I would say penalties would mean capital gains tax. So if you sell one property and then you invest in a like property, you can roll over your equity into the new property and avoid paying a capital gains tax on that transaction. And for some of these properties, that can be a significant savings.
Thank you. Yes, Representative Reed.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on a comment that the gentleman at the end here made. You mentioned that that these facilities are rarely sold for redevelopment, but then your colleague next to you mentioned that one was sold recently to turn 125 manufactured homes into 600 homes, which I assume was apartments. So taking under consideration that maybe there's not a lot of examples of turning them into Walmarts, there are recent examples of manufactured home parks being sold to be redeveloped into townhomes and condominiums, correct?
Correct, yeah. We've seen them developed. I mean, some have been developed into holding water or stormwater detention facilities by the counties as well. I think in Ellensburg, there's one that's being partially closed to expand the fairgrounds as well. So there are a myriad reasons why they may close, but for the most part, if it's going to be for a commercial reason, it will be for multifamily housing.
Okay, so redevelopment is typically the reason that it is sold.
Not sold, closed.
Closed. Thank you.
Closed, yeah. That, like I was saying, it conflates what happens. Just because one sells doesn't mean it is closing, and that's often I would say, a form of misinformation. Many residents seem to think that if a community sells, that it's going to be closed automatically, and that's just not the case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. The longer a timeline set under law, in my view, the more opportunity there is for consequences of that timeline itself. So I'm thinking about the length of time required under this proposed bill to give notice of a sale, and if the association wants to purchase it, then additional timelines from there. We can see the possibility of the delay in this timeline causing problems like foreclosures or or other issues with local governments or what have you. Do you have thoughts on potential legal liability that runs with this bill when the timeline contained in the bill could precipitate negative consequences on the private parties?
I do. Thank you for the question. So I worry that a property, whether it's an apartment with mold issues and a bad roof that presents safety issues, or it's a manufactured community that has septic tanks that are failing or infrastructure that's going bad, oftentimes they close because the infrastructure is bad and they want to redevelop it into something that's safer and greener, close to transit. I worry that the longer you delay that period and keep a property open that's already potentially unsafe, that there's going to be more and more liability going forward, especially if that period extends to a 3 or 4 year period where there's no investment in that infrastructure during that time.
Thank you. Other questions? I'll just question for staff. Serena, do you have any at the moment, or can you kind of look into that constitutionality question?
I need to look into that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will move to our virtual world. But in our next virtual panel, staff, if we could also bring up Russell Millard, Barbara Thibault, and Robert Cochran. And as we have our current virtual waiting room, I hope, Stacy Valenzuela. She available?
Peterson and members of the Housing Committee. My name is Stacy Valenzuela. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I live at Lakewood Villa Mobile Home Community in the 1st District. I implore you to give the full support to House Bill 1129. House Bill 1129 includes a provision that would encourage landlords to sell the property to the Residents Association or another eligible organization if they are thinking of selling. If this bill had passed last year, then everyone in my manufactured housing community would be a much happier, less concerning position. They would be living in a community owned and preserved by the residents or another nonprofit, and they would not be suffering at the hands of a predatory landlord who did buy the community and immediately raised the rents 28%. The seniors, young families, veterans, and those with disabilities who own their homes and reside in our manufactured housing communities are desperate to save our homes. Please help them retain this affordable housing and give your full support to HB 1129. Please help protect any other homeowners in the state from this situation happening to them. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Valenzuela. And next, do we have Andrew Calkins available?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Peterson and members of the committee. I'm Andrew Calkins, Director of Policy and Intergovernmental Affairs at King County Housing Authority, and I'm here testifying on behalf of the Association of Washington Housing Authorities in strong support of House Bill 1129. Manufactured housing communities are a valuable but dwindling affordable home ownership resource that exists throughout the state, and we need to make sure our state policies ensure that tenants, nonprofits, and public entities like housing authorities have ample opportunities to preserve them and prevent their future closure. This is a challenge that we've heard from our members across the state. In King County, KCHA has helped preserve 4 manufactured housing communities over the years, the most recent being the Friendly Village Senior Community in Redmond. These communities are often home to tight-knit groups of residents who've lived there near one another for many years. The communities often enable seniors to age in place and provide working households an affordable alternative to traditional home ownership. Preserving the remaining communities is one element of our region's work to preserve affordable housing, existing affordable housing, and this bill will help make that more possible. The bill builds on previous requirements regarding manufactured housing community sales that already exist, and it creates a real opportunity for eligible organizations to step in, negotiate in good faith, and potentially purchase a park that the owner is planning to sell. We like this bill, this version of the bill, because it provides multiple pathways forward in the event of a sale or closure. The reality is that it can take considerable time to put together a deal to purchase a property, even when it is a large entity like the one I work for, or a tenant organization. And it's going to take considerable time for someone to relocate their livelihood in the event of an actual closure. We think preservation will help increase long-term housing stability for people across the state and encourage you to pass House Bill 1129. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your testimony. Next, bring up Tina McKinstry.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Peterson and members of the committee. I live in Tecasa Village Homeowners Cooperative located north of Spokane in Washington. When we purchased our community in 2016, our initial rent was $375. In 2017, we raised our rent by $5 to $380. We are still at $380 in 2023, and that rent includes water and sewer. We have taken control over site fees, major infrastructure repairs, governance, and rules. We have a neighbor helping neighbor spirit that is provided to be the key for our resilience. We know that our on-site fees are paying off the land loan that we will never have to refinance again. Best of all, we don't worry about losing one of our most important things we own, our homes. I have a great career in banking on the administrative side. I purchased my home shortly after my divorce and was working to rebuild my life. This type of housing has allowed me the financial freedom to spend more time helping my children get on their feet in life. I have 3 adult children who live in my community. One of them is a single mom on disability, and this is the only place she can have the opportunity to afford a home of her own and build a life. While these homes are labeled mobile, they are simply not a structure you can hook up to your truck and move around. The cost and logistics with this are often out of reach for most homeowners. Mobile homes are the primary way low-income households break into home ownership and start building wealth. By closing, a community destroys the wealth created, puts the homeowner back to square one. I invite you to visit our community of 173 homes in Meade, Washington. We would be humbled to show you what we have accomplished and our future goals. Please give your full support to House Bill 1129 so that other seniors and young families living in manufactured housing communities can also enjoy the long-term security in their own homes. We are familiar with similar laws in other states Without question, legislation of this sort is the type homeowners need. This legislation proves that with once in a lifetime opportunity to acquire the land beneath their homes, it is done at fair market value, which ensures that landlords will not suffer no hardship and balances the interest of the landlords and the long-term security of the interest of the homes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And finally, in this panel, we'll bring up Ann Sadler.
Thank you, Committee Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to speak with you about House Bill 1129 today. For the record, my name is Ann Sadler. I'm 77 years old. I live at Bayview Senior Mobile Home Park in Mount Vernon. I love my community and I love my home. I'm also president of the Association of Manufactured Homeowners, also known as AMHO, and I'm a board member of the National Manufactured Homeowners Association. You could say I'm pretty knowledgeable about what is happening in our manufactured housing communities, both locally and nationally. I'm here today to ask you for your support of House Bill 1129, because the minimum of 3 years notice of closure is reasonable. If the landlord does not want to give people 3 years notice, then it is not unreasonable to expect them to justly compensate homeowners for the loss of their personal property when they are forced to lose their homes through no fault of their own. I would like to read what a manufactured homeowner wrote to me just yesterday. And I quote, "Let us stand firm against the unconscionable predation, preying and plundering of park owners and investor groups who have evidenced a complete disregard for the welfare of park residents. I continue to pray that they will reap what they have sown." Resident, Rancho Villa, Walla Walla, Washington, unquote. We all know that this practice of repurposing our manufactured housing communities is unsustainable. Even Bridget Henderson of Washington State Department of Commerce reports that the time frames for qualifying for relocation assistance is not long enough. Homeowners do not have enough time to arrange for demolition and removal of their homes from their community in order to qualify for the remainder of the state relocation assistance for which they are eligible. Homeowners threatened with the closure or sale of their community need time and money. They face the loss of their homes, so please help them to walk away with something. The landlords surely won't be empty-handed. Please support House Bill 1129 because we are better than this.
Thank you, Ms. Sadler. Any questions for anyone that spoke on this panel? Seeing none, thank you again. And staff, we will bring in for the on-deck online waiting room, Rachel Effenbein, Joanna Christ, Jan Leonard, and Michelle Thomas. And while they are queuing up, we'll see if Russell Millard is available.
Mr. Chair, Russell's not on Zoom.
Oh, how about Barbara Thibault?
She's not available either. We have Robert Cochran available.
Robert Cochran it is.
All right, can you hear me?
We can, yes, go ahead.
Very good. Well, Chair Peterson, happy Martin Luther King Day, and committee members. I'm Robert Cochran from Spokane, and I'm here on behalf of Contemporary Mobile Home Park, and we oppose HB 1129. The operating theory of the legislature in this bill is that tenants of manufactured housing communities could be better off if they owned their own communities. Do I have that right? If that is the case, wouldn't the legislature want to inform and educate all tenants of all these communities at any time in general, perhaps maybe annually? You can legislate that, and without trampling property rights. The dispute resolution program could be tasked with educating the possibilities of resident-owned communities to all the tenants. According to this bill, the legislature thinks only time tenants may want to get organized to form an entity to buy their parks is when the community is advertised for sale. Why wouldn't the tenants care about owning their community at any other time? Is this a case of where we really don't want it unless someone else wants it? Tenants may organize at any time. Any organized tenant group or other nonprofit can make an offer on a manufactured housing community anytime, including housing authorities. Think about it. If park owner knows that her tenants are organized and interested in buying once it is for sale, wouldn't the tenants have an advantage when it actually does go on the market? Instead, this bill would make the tenants an adversary for the park owner, throwing a wrench in the works to create an unconstitutional no sale period of over a year, costing time and money. I've sent you a package of my statements and research supporting my arguments, and hopefully you got them in your emails and you can read them. I'll answer any questions.
Great, thank you. And as you're the only one on this panel, any questions? Yes, Vice Chair Alvarado.
Thank you, Chair. Do you have examples of where unsolicited offers by manufactured housing community members has led to the purchase of a community?
I don't know of any. I mean, I'm not in a clubhouse full of park owners, but I don't know of any that have led to sales. But I tell you that the park I work for and are part of, we receive unsolicited offers multiple times a year, almost every month. And a few of them have been extremely detailed, very serious. All we had to do was sign a piece of paper saying, let's look into this further and make a deal. There are serious unsolicited offers being made all the time.
And Vice Chair Levitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. I'm curious about your concept of adding dispute resolution centers as part of the negotiation of sale or addressing disputes. Is there anything in statute that you're aware of now that would require the DRCs to get involved in the selling of property or in conversations about sales?
What I mentioned earlier was having an entity educate all the tenants of the possibilities of becoming a resident-owned community. I'm not saying that, and I was saying, for example, the Attorney General's office's Department of Dispute Resolution that we all pay for as manufactured park owners and tenants. I was saying that there's an entity that exists already. They already have the mailing list. They could distribute information informing everybody once a year that if you ever wanted to get to buy your own park, here's the steps you would take.
Great. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for your testimony and thank you for forwarding that information to the committee.
Thank you.
With that, we will close this panel. And looking at the time, and we still have two more bills to go. I think this is going to be the last panel we'll bring up. For those of you that were hoping to testify remotely, my apologies. Please, we will have the site open where you can testify in writing. So if you would please send any comments to the committee, that would be great. So here we will bring up Rachel Effenbein. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Rachel Elfenbein. For the past 3.5 years, I've been working with a nonprofit organization, Community Council, and community members in Columbia and Walla Walla counties to preserve manufactured home parks, because they are one of the only forms of affordable, unsubsidized housing that remain in our communities. The majority of manufactured home park residents in our region are seniors, and most of them live on fixed incomes. Manufactured home parks are almost completely full in our region. If a park were to close and residents were even able to move their homes, there would be nowhere for them to move to. And if they wanted to stay in our region, many residents would not be able to afford to rent local apartments. To avoid homelessness, many would have to apply for subsidized housing, which may take a year or more for them to be granted because of wait lists. For these reasons, we have been advocating with manufactured home park residents for opportunity to purchase legislation and manufactured home park zoning. Our advocacy resulted in College Place becoming the first city in Washington state to enact manufactured home park opportunity to purchase legislation in 2021. I urge you to follow College Place's example and enact House Bill 1129, which would provide a statewide opportunity to purchase and assist residents in the event their parks were to close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, for your testimony. And next up, let's bring in Michelle Thomas.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Thomas with the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance Pro on House Bill 1129. Manufactured housing is the most accessible path to home ownership for lower and fixed income households, including BIPOC households, seniors, and people with disabilities. And this bill is critical to solving Washington's affordable housing crisis. Preserving these communities is absolutely critical. Washington state already needs to add 1 million homes by 2044, and the vast majority of the need, 72% in fact, is housing needed for extremely low and very low income households, and that's the manufactured housing homeowner population. If we continue to lose our manufactured housing communities at the high rate that we're currently losing them at, it will make Washington's housing crisis much worse and much harder to solve. This bill incentivizes and provides meaningful opportunity for the permanent preservation by nonprofits who will keep rents within reach of the homeowners. This is a critical benefit of this bill since rents are increasing and are destabilizing homeowners and causing displacement. And in response to testimony from a prior testifier opposed to this bill, that there's no problem if it's merely sold to another landlord, it is indeed in the interest of the state for nonprofits to get in and purchase these properties in order to preserve the long-term affordability. Also, to the point made that destruction of these communities would allow more supply, if the community was sold in order to develop permanently affordable homes that the manufactured home residents could move into and therefore prevent their displacement, then maybe that comment would have a point. But otherwise, displacing an entire community of low and fixed income seniors in order to build housing for others is not an outcome based on equity or fairness, and is one that the state should take action to avoid. Further, it's also my understanding that a 1031 exchange only kicks in once the property is sold. So having a deal take place within a year still has the same ability for the seller to exercise a 1031 exchange than if you sold it within 2 months. Lastly, the 3-year notice period does not apply if there's a threat that the community is going to be condemned. So please do seriously consider this bill and do pass.
Thank you. And next up, let's bring in Jan Leonard.
Unmute there. Okay. Can you see me?
No, but we can hear you.
I wonder, okay, this doesn't make sense. My camera should be working. All right.
The audio is more important. Unless you have a dog in the background or something cool.
Here we go.
Yep, now we're all good.
Yeah.
Welcome.
My dog is sleeping. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Peterson and members of the committee. My name is Jan Leonard, and I live in a manufactured housing community in Walla Walla, Washington. I have lived here for 15 years since inheriting this house from my mother. Most of the residents are elderly and are on fixed incomes. Many are of advanced age and have significant health problems, but with medical facilities, healthcare providers, and shopping centers close by, it's a nice place to grow old. I love where I live. I love my home and the community I've become a part of. We help each other and look out for each other. The social isolation often felt by seniors is virtually non-existent. We choose to be here, to age in place, and with few exceptions have no intentions of moving, ever. So it was a great shock when a neighboring manufactured housing community was abruptly acquired by an out-of-state corporation. Their rent went up considerably, and the landlord continues to find more and more ways to extract money from them. Many have had to leave their homes because they could not afford to pay the increased lot rent and fees. If House Bill 1129 had been law, maybe these homeowners could have purchased the land with the help of a nonprofit housing agency and kept rents affordable. We need to save every manufactured home community that we can, but it won't be possible if predatory corporations and landlords can come in and economically evict our neighbors. We have lived and worked locally, contributed to our local economies, have been good citizens, and are self-respecting, independent seniors. Every city should want their senior population to be able to live in peace and comfort like we do, without fear of eviction, because their rent might suddenly become unaffordable, or even worse, their community closed. If a landlord does need to close a manufactured home community, seniors and young families need plenty of time to make life-changing decisions, and the current 12-month notice is not enough. We deserve better. Please give your full support to House Bill 1129. Washington seniors are relying on you to do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And finally, let's bring up Joanna Grist.
Thank you, Chair Peterson and members of the committee. My name is Joanna Grist, and I'm testifying on behalf of AARP in support of House Bill 1129. Thank you for hearing this important bill. AARP has nearly 900,000 members in Washington state. And one thing is clear, 77% of people want to
You have frozen, if you can hear me. First.
They choose these communities. Sorry, unstable internet. I'm turning off my
Rose,
video.
maybe turn off your camera. There you go.
Apologies. So more than 40% of residents in these communities are older adults and fixed incomes. They choose these communities because they're affordable and offer a sense of community and connectedness. Many move into these communities when children have grown up, a spouse has passed away, or they can no longer maintain a single family home. And the biggest challenge that a homeowner could be given is notice that they need to move, often leaving behind their home because of the transportation costs to safely relocate a unit is unavailable, or that a new location is unavailable. The legislature needs to support these communities, and this bill will allow a nonprofit housing agency or housing authority to purchase it, help preserve this affordable housing for seniors, many of whom feel ignored by current policies. Affordable, accessible, and safe housing are top priorities for everyone in Washington. Let's preserve what we have and keep seniors housed safe and securely in their own homes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for this last panel? All right, seeing none, thank you everybody for your testimony. With that, we will close the public hearing on House Bill 1129, and we will reopen the public hearing on House Bill 1199. And we have Christelle, you are here, come on up. And then staff, remote testifiers are Laura Fernando, Laura Pavlov, and Aaron Hike, if you can bring them into the waiting room. Oh, Aaron is here in person. Okie dokie. So we will, Christelle, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Chair Peterson, Ranking Member Clickard, and honorable members of the House Housing Committee. For the record, my name is Christelle Perkey, here today on behalf of the Washington State Chapter of Community Association Institute. CAI is signed in as other for House Bill 1199, addressing child care facilities within community associations. CAI understands the need that Washington State has for increasing the number of child care centers across Washington State and are excited to be partners on this. We do have some concerns that we just wanted to have on the record, and we've already had a lot of conversations with Representative Sen on this bill, and very, very productive conversations as well with the with DCYF. And so for the record, the questions are being raised around the liability in common areas, and then if a homeowner hires employees, who would be responsible for the employee if something were to happen in our common areas. As I said, I've spoken with the Government Affairs Advisor with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families on Friday briefly, and I was very enthusiastic about our conversation. And additionally, we found out that we can also have their education centers provide some sort of education for our homeowners to try to alleviate their concerns as well. So I did want to address, Representative Clipper, your questions on the noise complaints. This one, it's not actually in the bill. There's no language around that. However, I think local ordinances would still apply in that case, as well as the HOA guidelines there. And then Spencer, you mentioned fire codes. I think the same thing applies there too. And then also when it comes to occupancy of the children, it's also going to be limited by square footage as well. With that, I'm available for questions.
Great. Any questions, Spencer? Nothing? Sorry. No questions. Thank you. Since you're here, Erin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Wow, this is, I have to get rearranged. Hello, Chair Peterson and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Erin Hike with SEIU 925. We are the largest union of child care providers in Washington, and we're here in support of HB 1199. More and more people have recognized in the last couple of years how severe the shortage of child care is in our state and how important that is to recovering our economy. The Child Care Collaborative Task Force that I serve on has estimated that there's over 500,000 kids in the state who are 0 to 12 who do not have access to licensed childcare, and this impacts their lifelong learning, and it makes it really hard for parents, especially women, to go back into the workforce, especially as the economic recovery from the pandemic continues to go. Family child care providers are often the best solution for families who need non-standard hours of care. That's overnight before 6 a.m. when parents are working swing shifts, weekends, evenings, overnight. Family child care providers are majority women and Black, brown, and immigrant women. Our research has shown that family child care is the preferred setting for folks of color in Central Washington. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, we've heard from more providers who have had years of participation in early achievers, who have had very clean licensing visits for the extent of their, as they've operated their business, but are now having their HOAs demand that they close. To the question of noise, these are family homes that have been operating for years and years in most cases, and only in the last couple of years, when we've seen more people working from home, has it become kind of an issue. And so as people start moving back into offices, I think that you would see fewer complaints like that. That's speculation on my part, but sort of the timing lines up. But the bottom line is that if you demand that a family home close, you're displacing 12 kids. All of those folks have to go find new solutions for childcare. There's not enough of it to go around, and so it's a pretty vicious circle. And for those reasons, we're here in support of 1199. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, we will move to our remote panel. Thank you very much. And Laura Fernando, if you are...
Mr. Hello. Chair.
Yes. We are ready when you are.
Good evening. My name is Laura Pavlova. I've been a licensed Washington State child care provider and an SEIU 925 union member for over 6 years. I am here to show you my support for HB 1199. As a licensed Washington child care provider, I have to take part in continuous training and certification in order to state compliances with Washington state regulation. I've also had to go back to school to complete my certification in early childhood education. At my home childcare Alphabet Daycare in Lake Stephen, I provide care for combination of minority, subsidy, welfare, low-income families, and their children. Some are special needs. Some are foster children, and ECAP as well. All through 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, individuals like myself remain open so those considered essential workers like first responders could have dependable care for their children. School was closed while we were open. I fully support HB 1199 as I am currently being fined monthly by my HOA because they feel like my childcare shouldn't be allowed to operate from home. I pay monthly fines addition to my HOA's due despite have nothing wrong legally, spent a lot of my own money, attorney to represent me. I continue to stay open because I have responsibility to the children and families that I care for. Also because daycares are hard to find and are which would leave a lot of families stranded. There are many other minority childcare providers who, like myself in Washington, that have been suffering in silence for far too long, not having enough to lean on or help us, being bullied, forced to be closed down by our HOA. This is why I support and vote yes to HB 1199, as this will protect all families, children, homes from HOA mandating to close. Please help me and all my Washington providers to continue to support families and kids in our care by all supporting this bill.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for the work that you are doing in your community as well. And staff's at my understanding that Laura Fernando is not available. All right, with that, that is everybody that is signed in to testify. Any questions? So with that, we will close the hearing on House Bill 1199, and we will reopen the hearing on House Bill 1101. And Del, come on up. And then staff, we do have one person signed in remotely, Raylene Schifano, if you can.
Good afternoon again, committee. For the record, again, my name is Christelle Perkey, here today representing the Washington State Chapter of Community Association Institute. CAI is in support of House Bill 1101 regarding tenant screening in community associations. We were contacted during the interim about an issue with a single association where the board was asking for the detailed information of the background check and credit report of a tenant. We simply wanted to clarify in statute that association boards should not ask for this information for a couple of reasons. There is a duty to secure this information under the Fair Credit Reporting Act that the association might not know or comply with accidentally. The other thing is they are opening themselves up for the potential of a discrimination claim under the Fair Housing Act. The concept of the bill was to make as few changes as possible to the statute while addressing this situation. It is already allowed for associations to ask for a tenant screening to take place, and so we were just trying to make as little changes to what was already happening as possible. Again, to answer some of the questions that were raised earlier, tenant screening services are also all regulated federally under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And then also when it comes to local ordinances, this would not trump it, and I would be open to any changes to clarify that as well. And a shout out to my little ones, if that's okay. They're watching me for the first time ever. So Carter, Raina, and Shay, love you guys. Any questions?
Always welcome questions. Pepper or Washi's under the microscope of.
You guys did great last week.
No? All right. Okay. Christelle, thank you so much for your testimony. And staff, if we could bring in our remote testifier.
Mr. Chair, Raylene is not on Zoom.
Well, there we go. Anybody else? Well, with that, we will close the hearing on House Bill 1101, and I will actually give you a few minutes of your day. Back to you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. I think I did make some improvements to the work, mostly because staff showed me what to do, and my vice chairs. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.
All right.